So this is the first footage that we have from either side showing what's actually happening north of Pokrovsk, and it looks more and more like Ukrainian forces are hunting down, eliminating, and capturing Russian soldiers that infiltrated past the front lines a couple days ago. Now, this footage here is courtesy of the Ukrainian 93rd Mechanized Brigade, who said they participated in stabilizing the situation, clearing the village of Vasily. They also say the Russians managed to partially enter Pokrovsk, quote, but they did not stay there long. And the official statement from the 93rd Brigade says, quote, the brigade's fighters also managed to capture many enemy soldiers. The counterattack involved a reconnaissance company of fighters, various types of drones and artillery. Additionally, strike ground robotic systems were used in liberating Ukrainian territories. Robots equipped with machine guns fired at enemy concentrations. Again, I want to note that at this point, as we move over to the map to give you an idea of the areas we're looking at, zero footage from the Russian side at this point. Maybe, I can't find it. It's not circulating on any of the Russian channels that normally are talking about this, and we'll get into this a little later in today's video, but by and large across Russian channels, they're just pretending like this whole situation north of Pokrovsk isn't happening. There's no situational updates here. It just went radio silent for like the last 2 days, which, again, kind of puts me more in the camp that Ukraine has counterattacked. We know they've redeployed forces there, and it probably shows some degree of Ukrainian success at snuffing out this infiltration. Now, we're using a deep state map here, which notably was the first resource to really show this breakthrough. So this wasn't even showing up on Russian sources or Russian maps for a couple days. But what we're seeing here is this, I went back a day actually to show this was kind of the extent of the advance, the Russian advance. And what we've seen in recent days is a pretty significant shift where Ukrainian forces cut that off. And this is the most recent update for Deep State map, showing the blue areas recaptured by Ukraine, the red still held by Russia, with the areas in between still being contested. And a quick note while looking at this here is it's not exact and it's not perfect. And we have to get away from the idea that these maps are 100% accurate or up to date. And I think most of us are there recognizing that there's a lot of error in these maps, intentional or not. So what I've seen some pushback on recently was people saying, oh, look, Ukraine cleared this area, but they never even said that Russia controlled it. So how did they clear an area that they technically already held? The Russian elements that we were talking about, that even the Russian side has been talking about up through here, are small units. 1, 2, 3, 4 people at most. Not even units, individual soldiers. So it's entirely necessary for Ukrainian forces to come in here and clear the entire area. They're not going to look at deep state map and say, well, technically, the Russians are done at that line, so as long as we get up to that point, this little three-way intersection, we should be good. No, they're going to keep clearing all the way through, and eventually you'll see the blue, should they continue, pushing further out than the red is right now. It's just not a 100% accurate assessment in any direction of what this actually looks like. Now, Deep State map adding to the assessment here, they said, quote, over the past 3 days, the defense sector of the Pokrovsk direction, the forces and means of the 1st Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine's Azov, together with adjacent and subordinate units, stopped the enemy's advance. As a result of search and strike actions, the following settlements were cleared. And they start up here in the north, and again, you're going to see them refer to settlements that are now confirmed cleared that were not necessarily shown as under Russian control. Starting up here with Pokrovsk. See, that was never even the peak advance shown as being controlled by Russia. As of today, Deep State says that Pokrovsk up here to the north is cleared, as well as Rubizhny and a lot of these others. I'm going to butcher every single one of these. You know it, I know it. But essentially, they run through a bunch of villages and settlements through this area that are now cleared of Russian forces. Azov did put out a statement themselves. This is the first Corps. They said due to the active operations in their operational zone, and I should note, Azov is not the only element operating here. We will call out all the other units here in a moment. They said the enemy suffered significant personnel losses. Azov says in their area specifically, which I believe to be this area in the central and southern portion of this bulge, but we'll see. 271 Russian soldiers killed, 101 wounded, and 13 captured. Azov included that they destroyed or damaged 1 Russian tank, 2 armored combat vehicles, and 37 units of automotive or motorcycle equipment. I have no doubt on the motorcycles and unarmored vehicles. I haven't, again, we're operating on very little visual confirmation at this point. I haven't seen anything to suggest that tanks or armored personnel carriers or armored vehicles made it up into this pocket. But if Azov is operating all the way down here in the south, it wouldn't be shocking to find that the Russians had put some sort of armored support in this general area that Azov would have had well within strike range of some of their drones. Now, speaking of Azov, we're actually in the middle of a fundraiser for those guys. I'm going to pull up the website here because I can't keep up with this. It's happening too fast. I'll put out a video and say, we've raised X amount of dollars, and then by the time the video goes live, like an hour later, we've blown past that. So there we go, 41,591 as of this video. We didn't even put this out 4 days ago because y'all are incredible. This is insane. We're picking up thermal devices, night vision goggles, drones, and commo equipment for the guys that are actively involved with pushing the Russians out north of Pokrovsk. In fact, as we were putting this site together, we used the map of like the original breakthrough, and we might have to talk to the people over there at Zynga's Paw, awesome organization. We might have to talk to them about making a bit of an update here because this is not exactly what the situation looks like north of Pokrovsk anymore. No doubt thanks to in part, the guys over there at Azov. But if interested and able to contribute, the link is in the description below as well as the pinned comment. 41,000, we're knocking this thing out of the park. You guys are absolutely incredible. Now, moving back over to the map here with some additional assessments from Deep State. I did mention that it was not only Azov participating in this operation, so we do want to make sure. I mean, right out the gate, we had the 93rd up here in the north. That was the original footage. But according to Deep State, there were also assets from the Air Assault Forces, 79th and 82nd Brigades, as well as the 1st and 425th Separate Assault Battalions, 25th Separate Assault Brigade, 2nd Battalion of the 92nd Separate Assault Brigade, 32nd Mechanized Brigade, 93rd, as mentioned, 38th Marine Brigade, and 14th Brigade of Operational Purpose. I would not assume that every one of those units in their entirety were involved in these operations, but likely a mix. Some of them probably pushed down to help secure the northern approaches to Pokrovsk, and some of these, instead of entire brigades being deployed, it very well could have been select company-sized elements, but the participation was pretty widespread here across the Ukrainian armed forces. Now, a little bit of a assessment of what went wrong here and how this all happened from Deep State. They said, quote, the enemy found a weak spot in the defense, which they immediately exploited and began pulling in infantry. Fortunately, the enemy continued their chaotic movement deep into the territory, even bypassing outposts and observation posts of the newly formed IFU, and did not manage to properly consolidate to bring up main forces, including drone crews. And this is something we talked about at the peak of their advance. Was we know that a lot of the resupply happening to some of these individuals up here in the northern portion was being done by drone dropped supplies. They were bringing supplies in via drones because there was no secure ground line of communication through here. So it was going to be challenging to keep them resupplied. And no doubt that appears to be partially what happened here. They say at the time, the defense forces tried to resist the enemy somehow, but due to destabilization of the situation and lack of understanding of the full picture of events, it was difficult to retain the Russian advance here. They say, unfortunately, it is too early to speak of complete success. The situation remains quite difficult. Defense force fighters continue clearing and blocking enemy forces, making great efforts to reduce the enemy's attempts to zero. Work continues. So this is a big change from where it was a couple days ago. And if this map is accurate with Deep State, these pockets of Russian fighters are probably going to be in for a pretty rough stretch here, being closed in on from multiple sides. But this is not over, not by a long shot. And even if this is contained, which does appear to be the direction it's heading in right now, it does show the vulnerabilities in the Ukrainian line, something we've talked about quite a bit and is not a secret, not a surprise. The surprise here, I would say, is that Russian forces made it as far as they did, albeit in small numbers, it looks like. But the fact that they were able to make it 10, somewhere near 20 kilometers through the Ukrainian lines before enough quick reaction force or QRF elements were deployed in sufficient strength to stop that continued advance. Now, turning to the Russian side here, which has been really interesting in a lot of ways to keep track of, there's just no information coming from them. By and large, a lot of the Russian mill bloggers that are putting out daily updates around battlefield updates or the battlefield situation just stopped. They're not addressing this incursion to the north at all. For the first couple days, they were exclusively citing Ukrainian channels and kind of laughing at how Ukrainian analysts and military personnel were fretting over this situation. but very, very, very few organic, original Russian sources. And I mentioned at the beginning when we showed that video from the 93rd Mechanized Brigade, that's it. We don't have any Russian footage showing the extent of this breakthrough. Well, there's some mythical footage out there. I should say the comment sections I see in a bunch of videos for about 24 hours now have been saying, why aren't you showing the ambush of Azov where they all got hit coming out of their vehicle and they were completely destroyed? It's like the same comment on multiple platforms I can't find that video for the life of me. Like, even that's not even circulated on Russian channels. I don't know if it's some old video or just some random bot narrative that Azov has been completely destroyed north of Pokrovsk, but that mythical footage is the closest I've come to seeing anything from the Russian side at this point. Two majors here said, to give you an idea of how they're just not addressing this, two majors said, quote, in their overall battlefield update today. So with all of this happening, mind you, like this major tactical breakthrough is a term I'm seeing utilized recently, which I think is a correct way to put it. This tactical breakthrough, the most significant that I would say we've seen in months, if not years, and then immediately thereafter, a pretty significant counterattack by Ukrainian forces. Don't worry about that, says two majors. His only update was, quote, north of Pokrovsk, the Russian armed forces have advanced towards Rodinsky, right here, and are storming the development of the northern and northeastern outskirts of the city. Zero information. And that, read into that how you will, but the fact that this is being completely ignored by all Russian sources that I can find right now makes me think that they don't have a lot of confidence that whoever they have up here is going to make it out of the next couple days or weeks alive. Now, Ukrainian President Zelensky gave an update on the situation as well just earlier today. He said, quote, we are defending our positions along the entire front, and for the second day in a row, we have successes in some extremely difficult areas in Donetsk, in the direction of Dobropilya and Pokrovsk. So again, this area right here. He says, in particular, I want to highlight the units of the 1st Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine, Azov, units of the 7th Air Assault Corps, and units of the 38th Separate Marine Brigade, as well as units of the 93rd Mechanized Brigade. The destruction of the occupiers who tried to infiltrate deep into our positions continues. So that's generally where this situation sits right now. I think, again, it's worth reiterating that all of the information we're working with here is publicly available, which means at the very least, there's a degree of delay and inaccuracy based off the actual situation on the ground. So a lot of times we run into challenges where we get it's murky for say a week, and then we get more details and video footage and first-person accounts, and it doesn't match up one for one. And I think the issue there is a lot of times we assume that we're operating off of a full picture, and we just aren't. These maps give us the false impression that we know the exact location of Ukrainian and Russian units day in and day out, and it's just not even close. There's, again, at the very least, a delay, and there's along a lot of the front, especially where the fighting is very contested and ongoing, there's more that we don't know than we do know. And that goes in both directions. That's not just a Ukrainian thing. When you're looking at Russian sources as well, there's always going to be a lot more unknowns than knowns. But as of now, it does look like Ukraine has counterattack is the right way to put it, resecuring some of their areas behind the front lines, but it looks like that is ongoing based off of the tempo and the pace that this has been progressing. I would expect to see more videos, more pictures, more updates from the Ukrainian side in the next 24 to 48 hours, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Russian analysts really address this at all. But again, if interested and able, we've got the fundraiser in the linked in the description and pinned comment below. You guys are awesome. See how quickly we're coming along on that thing. And the Azov guys, talking with them pretty regularly now through this fundraiser, are blown away. Like, they can't believe the amount of support. So it's for their international legion over there, and those guys are amped to get the help here. But anyways, that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.